to even begin to recount. I've only been here for a part of them, and I can tell you that between the training and the leadership and the leadership training and all of the different kinds of programs and inspiration and guidance that Suzanne has given us because of her professional experience that she gained, I think partially as a result of knowing Sherwin and being inspired to go and receive all of that different kind of training, and because of her own congregational experience that she took care of, that she did on her own, and just because she's incredible. This entire organization has, in so many ways, become what it is because of Suzanne. Charlie had a completely different group of responsibilities that he took on, notably, and this of course, takes us back to the pre-digital age, when he was doing the Humanist, which was our monthly magazine here, which I have seen many copies of, and that was a job of work. And it would still be today, even in the digital age, but on top of it, there was all that extra stuff of having to publish something that was on paper and sent out, and it was a magnificent publication. And then on top of that, he was president, and then he was president again for me, and just on and on and on. Head of our Adam Society, head of now taking on the building and all of this kind of stuff. So between the two of them, this wasn't just like, and we appreciate, of course, when a husband and wife just sort of say, let's split the things and we'll be a volunteer together. It's great when they do that, but this was not that. This was never that. And I was really happy when I saw that you guys were on separate lines. I didn't really imagine it any other way, but we never discussed it. At least I wasn't part of that, because you got to be on separate lines, because what you've done is so much for this congregation, so much for this community, and I should add, so much for Humanistic Judaism in general, just as a result of all of that, and plus the national roles that or the national prestige you brought to our congregation. So anyway, that's my very long-winded way of saying thank you. Toda Rabbah, and we love you. And so I was going to do this anyway, and we're going to put this plaque when Elaine comes back. A lot of people are out of town, and Elaine and Kathy are among them. Kathy Radner, our new president, Elaine, our outgoing president. And we wanted to get a picture. We would have gotten a picture if the temple hadn't closed down, because the tree fell on the thing and the other thing happened, and et cetera. So we're going to keep it, and we'll put it up where we will, but you'll get another opportunity for us to thank you. But right now, I want to invite both of them up. They'll be lighting candles in a moment. And I think, Suzanne, you had a few words, and it was not connected to knowing that I was going to talk about this. So please come forward.
I hardly know where to begin at this point, but I just wanted to say that 54 years ago, come this August, in 1971, Charlie and I walked into this building for the very first time. And we had no idea that this building was really brand new then. You had just had your inaugural whatever, in April of '71. That's when the building was new. We didn't know anything about this building. We didn't know anything about Humanistic Judaism. All we knew is that we had heard that there was a rabbi here that would intermarry a couple. And that's what brought us here. It changed our life. This building, and all of you that are in it, and all the people before us and those that will come after us, I think, have been a part of our married life. And this is like home to us. This is like our family. This is our family. And our 3 children all had their life cycles here, and our 3 grandsons all had their baby namings here. And all of the significant things of our life, both the good and the some not so good, have taken place in this building. So on Wednesday night, when they named us as getting the Anne Ellen Logan Award, Charlie and I were just, we looked at each other. We're sitting on the couch for the meeting, and we just looked at each other like we couldn't believe this was happening. It was such an honor, really. We were so humbled by it. And I don't know what our life would have been had we not found the Birmingham Temple. So tonight I want to thank two people that came just because they're really good friends of ours. Charlie, this is Charlie's childhood friend from New Jersey who went to Hebrew school with Charlie and grew up with Charlie, Bruce and his lovely wife, Carol. And I just told them how thrilled we were about getting this award. And I said, yeah, if you wanted to come, it would be okay on Friday night. And here they are. And I can't thank you enough for being here. Anyway, Charlie and I look forward to many, many more years, I hope, right here in this building. And no matter what we have to do to keep it going, we got to keep it going because it's not just our lives that have been affected. It's touched many, many hundreds and maybe thousands of people. Anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah, you can stay up here.
Oh, okay.
You can head over to the piano.
Oh, we're going to go this way. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to do my little reading. Okay. All right, so Arthur, if you will, the first slide. All righty. We come together this Shabbat, each bringing with us a private world of hopes, of fears, of dreams. Some of us are burdened by anxieties and cares that all but crash our hope in the future. Others have hearts filled with happiness, grateful for the joys of the past week, yet aware that even the most fortunate are vulnerable before the mystery of tomorrow. Every life is a unique blending of joy and of sorrow, of fulfillment and frustration. Beneath our uniqueness, we are all bound together by our common humanity. All of us deeply yearn to know true freedom and peace. Each of us seeks the personal liberation of a mind that is not enslaved to conventional wisdom, a heart that is able to love without fear, a spirit that cries yes to our potential. Each of us strives too for the inner peace that comes with finding a harmony between our aspirations and our abilities. This is the Shabbat peace to which we aspire. I invite you both to please light our Shabbat candles. Oh, you can use the match. It'll be easier for you. Baruch Haor Ba'olam, Baruch Haor Ba'adam, Baruch Haor Ba'shalom, Ba'shalom, Baruch Haor, Baruch Haor Ba'Shabbat. Thank you again, both of you. Our readers tonight are Tom Fleischer, Jean Klarich, Ruth Kadish, Lonnie Fleischer, and Marty Bernstein. And we'll begin with Tom.
Shabbat Shalom. May the doors of our community be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. Altogether,
All who have cares to unburden,
gratitude to experience, hopes to nurture. May the doors of our community be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
may their threshold no stumbling block
Young or your feet. May they be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this congregation be all who enter the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
Israel, likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, lechu v'nelcha. Ki rekor habracha, mekor habracha. Mishkinoteka Israel, Ma tovu, Alecha Yaakov, Alecha Yaakov, Mishkinoteka Israel.
As we gather on this Pride Shabbat, may each of us recognize the treasure that is in every single human being. May we open our hearts with full and true support of each other. May we embrace ourselves and each other openly, proudly, and joyfully. May we locate and offer ourselves and one another the courage, strength, and compassion to live with integrity and authenticity. And may we open our eyes to the gifts and blessings we offer and receive from each other.
L'chunranana, 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 la Shabbat. L'chunranana, 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 la Shabbat. Nariya, nariya, la yom simchatenu, nikadma b'shalom. Nariya, nariya, la yom simchatenu, bizmirot naliyalo. L'chunranana, 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 la Shabbat. L'chunranana, 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 la Shabbat. Nariya, nariya, la yom simchatenu, nekadma b'shalom. Nariya, nariya, la yom simchatenu, bizmirot nariya lo. L'chunranana, 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 la Shabbat. L'chunranana, 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 la Shabbat.
One day, the words coming out will sound strange. Oppression based on gender or orientation will be a memory, the pain of hiding, repressing, denying, history to honor and remember, honoring the triumphs of those who fought to be free, remembering the violence and vitriol that cost lives. Should love win at long last, then the lessons of love your neighbor as yourself will be as natural as breathing. And one day, love can win every heart. Love can win every soul. Fear can vanish like smoke, and tenderness for all can fill our hearts. Love can win. In the end, love can absolutely win. Man for man, woman for woman, woman for man, man for woman, human for human. all genders, all orientations, all true attachments of the heart. Let this come speedily in our day, a tribute to the many and the diverse, a tribute to love deep and true, each of us for each other.
Amar Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ve'ahavta l'reacha, l'reacha kamocha, ze klal gadol gadol b'Torah, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ve'ahavta l'reacha, l'reacha kamocha, ze klal gadol gadol b'Torah, Amar Rabbi Akiva.
Our humanistic philosophy insists that we all work to end inequality, injustice, and violence. Today, more than ever before, our movement lifts up the LGBTQ community to ensure freedom from fear. In that spirit, in 2023, Humanistic Judaism celebrated Harvey Milk as a role model. He was an iconic rights activist, California's first openly gay elected official, who horribly lost his life to an assassin in 1978. Wherever Harvey Milk went, he wore a button that said, "I am all of us," an excerpt from a poem he wrote during his fight against California's proposed ban on queer educators. This is his poem. "I am all of us. I can be killed with ease. I can be cut right down, but I cannot fall back to my closet. I have grown. I am not by myself. I am too many. I am all of us."
Efori ori bi, efo tikvati tikvati bi, efo kochi kochi bi, vegam bak vegam bak, efo kochi kochi bi, vegam bak vegam bak. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you.
The Talmud teaches, all who can protest against some wrong committed by their family and do not are accountable together with their family. All who can protest against some wrong committed by a citizen of their city and do not are accountable together with all citizens of the city. All who can protest against some wrong committed by the whole world and do not are accountable together with all the citizens of the world. Let us honor the resilience,
struggles, celebrations, and pride of the LGBTQ community. Let us take inspiration from them and others to fight for the lives of all of our fellow citizens. Let us do so through supporting each other, honoring love, respecting the dignity of every person, and resisting tyranny, voting, and protesting. For the sake of all those who suffer oppression, let us stand up for peace and equality.
נפתח לנו שערי צדק, כן בחסד ורחמים. נפתח לנו שערי צדק, כן בחסד ורחמים. אלה שערים לשלום, נפתח לנו ונבובם. אלה שערים לשלום, נפתח לנו ונבובם. נפתח לנו שערי צדק, כן בחסד ורחמים. נפתח לנו שערי צדק, כן בחסד ורחמים.
The Merger poem by Judy Chicago. And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power, and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind, and then all people will be gentle, and then all people will be strong, and then no person will be subject to another's will, and then all will be rich and free and varied, and then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many, and then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old, and then all will nourish the young, and then all will cherish life's creatures, and then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth, and then everywhere will be called Eden once again.
נעשה שלום בעולם, נעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל העולם באמרו שלום. נעשה שלום בעולם, שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל העולם ואמרו שלום, שלום. נעשה שלום בעולם, נעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל העולם ואמרו שלום. נעשה שלום בעולם, שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל העולם ואמרו שלום, שלום.
You know, as I'm listening to that beautiful rendition of Naaseh Shalom, it occurs to me it was written, of course, by Debbie Friedman, who wrote so much of our iconic music. In fact, the next song we're going to hear, also by her. Her name now adorns the School of Sacred Music at my alma mater, the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. She and I knew each other. We weren't dear friends or anything, but we met on many occasions. I facilitated her concerts on more than one occasion. And I would say for the first 3 or 4 of those, neither of us knew the other was gay, but we both were. Yehi zichra livracha. May her memory be blessed. In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight we extend our well wishes to these members of our community and to their loved ones, to Lee Bricker, to Saul Foreman, to Jim Walker. And we add to that short list the names of anyone whom you're thinking about this evening. Anybody? Yes, Howard? Anybody else? Thank you, Marty. Did we miss anyone? May all who suffer know that they are not alone, that we are there. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a refuah shlema, a complete recovery, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right.
Well, we did it that way for years, and unfortunately, we have not been able to do it for the last almost 2 years, as this horrible anniversary approaches, as today is the 630th day of captivity and the 91st Shabbat for the hostages who remain in Gaza. As we say every week, and this week we do so knowing that even fewer are alive, because in the tumult of the Iran war, we learned that others that we had hoped perhaps might be alive, always kept hope alive, their bodies were recovered by the IDF in Gaza in those horrible tunnels. So we say again, as has become our ritual, from the heart, may those who continue to endure captivity find the courage to carry on. May those who love them not despair of their return. May they soon emerge from their confinement whole in body and in spirit to know once again the embrace of loved ones.
מקום הקולק בתוכנו, מקורות הברכה מעברותינו. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Shalom. Mekom hakolat betochenu, mekorot habracha mevrotenu. May those in need of healing
No refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Shalom. On this Shabbat of Pride, we also observe a Shabbat of remembrance, as we remember our LGBTQ siblings who died because of who they were, those murdered by fanatics long ago, those who perished in the Holocaust, those who suffered at the hands of evil regimes and still do, and those who were struck down in our towns and cities in our own times. We remember, too, those who died at their own hands, driven to despair by a world that hated them because of their love and gender identities. With hearts turned toward compassion, we also remember those who lived lives of loneliness, repressing their true natures and refraining from sharing their love with one another. As we remember the sacrifice of so many who were martyred to the hatred and rejection of others, let us strive to bring an end to hate and oppression of every kind. Our thoughts now turn to all who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation, whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. As tonight, we observe the yahrzeits of these beloved members of our community and their friends and loved ones. of Lucille Arking, Nathaniel Coburn, Lillian Finkelstein, Emil Haas, Paul Kadish, Gloria Matthews, Tova Malinsky, Cecil Plafkin, Judith Rockert, Margaret Stowicki, and Samuel Tabashnik. If there's someone whom you're thinking about tonight, whose name you'd like to add to that list, please do. Anybody? We say Yehi Zichram Livracha. It's the Jewish way of saying that we hope that their memories will provide us with not just the blessings of the lessons that they chose to leave behind, but also some happy memories, some wonderful moments that we can turn to when we miss them the most. If you can do so comfortably, please rise as together we will read our interpretation, our humanistic version of Kaddish. Nit gadal v'nit kadash v'ruach ha'adam. Let us dignify and ennoble all people in the spirit of our shared humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit and peace of mind. May justice and peace permeate and comfort the house of Israel and all those who dwell on earth. And let us say, Ken Yehi, may it be so. Well, we have a song that's based, I guess, on the title of my talk tonight, The Long and Winding Road to Yes. You don't even need to introduce it, because we all know it, so they'll see immediately why you chose it.
Long and winding road that leads to your door will never disappear. I've seen that road before. It always leads me here. Lead me to your door. The wild and windy night that the rain washed away has left a pool of tears, crying for the day. Why leave me standing here? Let me know the way. Many times I've been alone, and many times I've cried. Anyway, you'll never know the many ways I've tried. Still they lead me back to the long and winding road. You left me standing here a long, long time ago. Don't leave me waiting here. Lead me to your door.
I never thought of that as a gay anthem before, but it actually, if you think about it the right way, it is this long and standing, and the door leads to freedom, and the door leads to liberation. And I'm going to liberate myself from this jacket because it's 1,000 degrees in here. know we had a storm, and the storm left some residual effects, including the air. So, if you don't mind, I'm just going to make myself comfortable. Give me a moment here. I do not have all those layers that I used to keep me comfortable. All right, tonight we're celebrating Pride Shabbat, and I understand there are a large number of people online. I can tell you I got texts. People get afraid of the thunderstorms, but that's why we stream, because we want everybody to be able to participate. This is a tradition, this Pride Shabbat, that's become very prevalent in the, really in the non-Orthodox Jewish world. And also, even among a tiny handful of our more traditional friends. It presents a great opportunity to celebrate, but I think it's also an opportunity to remember how the Jewish world, as we're going to talk about tonight, has dealt with non-traditional relationships, homosexuality, transsexuality, genderism in particular. And so tonight I want to use this opportunity to reflect upon that long and winding road that brought us to where we are today. For most LGBTQ Jews, inclusion did not come easily, certainly not automatically. In fact, it came surprisingly late. And as it came usually only partially, even in the more reform-minded religious and cultural Jewish circles. When inclusion began to enter the conversation, it always came with conditions and with many, many compromises. Some of these were even imposed by communities that demanded no obedience to tradition, no fealty to Jewish law. These were non-halachic, non-legally Jewish, non-traditional communities, halacha being Jewish law. I always forget to tell you that. They weren't necessarily observing Jewish law. So why this when the other restrictions that governed parts of Jewish life had been dropped? But ultimately, of course, it did arrive in many places in many ways, but not before it was brought about through the courage of individuals who lived their truth before their communities were ready to embrace it. Some of their stories are triumphant, others are painful. All of them mattered. So Pride Shabbat is not just a moment to throw out the flag and all the colorful t-shirts that the stores are putting up today. It's an opportunity to remember how we got here, and tonight, how our community of Jews got here, or communities of Jews got here. All of us together, those of us who are queer, I have to tell you, it ages me. I'm still uncomfortable with the word, but I think it's something that we need to become comfortable with. And those of us who are straight alike. To do so, I'm going to take us on a little historical journey through the ways that the Jewish world, the Reform, Conservative, Reconstructionist, Orthodox, and the Humanistic movements and the state of Israel have responded to the presence and dignity of LGBT Jews throughout the decades. We're joining tonight with many other Jewish congregations and organizations in celebrating, not all on the same Shabbat, but a Pride Shabbat during the month of June. Because like the majority of the Jewish world, we as a humanistic congregation demand a recognition of the dignity that is deserved of all people. For most of Jewish history, LGBT people lived in the margins, if honestly they were even seen at all. That was quite rare. But when they were, of course, it was when they were to be classified as transgressors, sinners. This is built into our tradition. It begins with the Torah itself. This is because while the Torah actually makes only a few references to same-sex acts, most famously Leviticus, what it does say in the context of the prohibition is that not only shall male not lie with male as with a woman, but that it is an abomination, which is a pretty harsh term in the Torah. Later, during the rabbinical era, the sages, our rabbis, noted for many of their compassionate interpretations, codified this in their interpretations of halakha as a complete prohibition, not just on male-male relationships, but also on female-female, on same-sex relationships between women, which are not mentioned in the Torah, but nonetheless found themselves swept up in the halacha. Interestingly, they didn't call it an abomination, which had a little bit of a halachic twist to it. When it came, though, interestingly, to gender variations, it was a more complicated picture. It was not exactly affirming, don't get me wrong. But the ancient rabbis, well, they dealt with every kind of human phenomenon. They were legislating and talking about what they believed to be God's entire universe, right? So they were familiar with. They'd either seen or heard about the existence of people with physical sex or gender identities that did not conform to male or female norms. That was something that many people knew about. And so we find in the Talmud terms like androgyny, which of course is from the Greek, androgynous. But these people, of course, were not given any special level of dignity, nor were they who claimed themselves to simply feel this way and didn't manifest it biologically, treated as anything other than legal anomalies, curiosities that needed to be dealt with in Jewish law, not people to be celebrated or affirmed. This ancient picture was the norm for thousands of years of Jewish existence. In this way, and completely understandably, and I'm sure unsurprisingly to all of us, in pre-modern times, Jewish communities behaved just like all the other societies by which they were surrounded or embedded. Queer Jews remained invisible, closeted, or sometimes, even when it was found out, simply thrown out, excommunicated from their families, from Jewish life. Now, you would think the modern era would have brought more change, but we know from the general history of gay and lesbian and queer rights that that wasn't the case. But interestingly, too, I find it interesting and find it kind of ironic that even with the advance of all the religious reforms that were happening, things that many of you have studied with me throughout the 18th century and 19th century and into the 20th century, as mountains of other Jewish legal restrictions were simply stricken from the emerging reform and even conservative movements, nothing was done to accommodate people who were gay. Why? The same reason. Influence from the wider cultures. Not even the secular Jewish culture communities did anything about it. Not the Yiddishists, not the Zionists, nobody. Change did not come to our world as Jews until the latter half of the 20th century. And even then, it was glacially slow, leaving those who were now awakening and able to talk about, in some circles, about their sexual differences with no place to show up as their whole selves. No language to describe their truth, and certainly no expectation that they could ever be fully welcomed in the larger Jewish world. But there were a few, a precious few, who chose not to be silent. And once they began to raise their voices, parts of the Jewish world started haltingly, a bit unevenly, and sometimes quite unwillingly, to listen. If any movement amongst the liberal Jewish movements can claim to have been first, or at least the loudest, in affirming LGBT rights, it was the Reform movement. Didn't begin with the institutional arms of the movement, which I'll talk about in a moment. It began at the grassroots, with much of the real work of inclusion coming from lay people and even from congregations, but not from committees. 1972 was the turning point, when just 3 years after the Stonewall Uprising, a group of mostly Reform Jews in Los Angeles founded a congregation called Beth Chaim Chadashim, the House of New Life. It was the world's first LGBTQ+++ synagogue. It was a necessary and historical step, created because the Reform movement had yet to make space for them. But in a remarkable and meaningful decision, the Reform Union of American Hebrew Congregations, as it was then called, today's Union for Reform Judaism, agreed to accept that community. And so it also became the first officially recognized gay and lesbian synagogue in the world. Once LGBT-centered congregations this one had been founded, others soon followed. Cities like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, of course. In those days, I was already an active teenage member of the Reform movement. I was part of the whole youth world, et cetera, and yes, already in middle school and high school, questioning my own sexuality and everything connected to it and to Judaism. Excuse me? I, like many other people who it turned out were in the same situation, was deeply closeted, but also acutely aware of what was happening. And so it was that I remember very personally as a teenager when in 1977, the Reform Movement's Central Conference of American Rabbis, by the way, I'm still a member, and it's because of things like this, became the first major Jewish organization to make any kind of pro-gay statement. A resolution voted upon and passed, not without some opposition, in support of civil rights for gay men and lesbians. In the context of that era, in Jewish religious circles, it was a bold move. And soon it would be put to the test. The first of these was the AIDS crisis of the 1980s. And here I must say that the Reform movement distinguished itself, perhaps more than at any other time since their work in the civil rights era, through highly public acts of compassion and of advocacy, when so many others in our country were using the AIDS pandemic as a tool to engage in good old-fashioned gay bashing. Many, many Reform rabbis were among the few clergy who were willing to even officiate at their funerals, much less come to them in hospitals and offer pastoral care. Still, there was quite some way to go. When I entered rabbinical school in Cincinnati, some of you were there with me, in 1984, not then, recently, in 1984, it turned out that I had many future gay colleagues there, but I didn't know it, and they didn't know it either. Most of us, almost all of us, were closeted. I was married at the time, so too were some of them, and we, along with our spouses, most of whom also knew and suffered in one way or another, we went through the closet of rabbinical school, a requirement of Reform Judaism at that time. When I was ordained in 1989, the admission of gays and lesbians, few talked about trans people ever, was still forbidden, but we were getting close. Shortly before that time, there was a resolution that declared that rabbis, in fact this happened right at the beginning of my rabbinate, that rabbis could be ordained. And so in the 1990s this changed. And from there on, progress grew rapidly. In 2000, the CCAR, that rabbinical group, formally endorsed the right of Reform rabbis to officiate at same-sex weddings. In 2015, and this does seem recent, doesn't it? They declared full support for transgender rights, recognizing gender as a spectrum and calling for inclusive language and spaces in Jewish life. Now understand that by the time they did much of this, the Reform movement was already there. But sometimes institutions take longer because there's always somebody blocking some vote somewhere. But even as gay and lesbian rabbis were being ordained, they were also acutely aware, and some of them even being warned, that it would impact, or could impact at the very least, their placement or acceptance in congregations. That has all changed. And today, the fact that it has changed is a tribute to American Jewish lay leadership and their openness. Today, Reform Judaism places inclusion as central to its identity. Today, LGBT rabbis, cantors, and educators in that movement serve openly, and synagogues host weddings with pride. In both senses of the word. And gender expansive language has made its way into many prayer books and rituals. That movement, the Reform movement, deserves a great deal of credit for this, because they were the pioneers. I'll talk about Reconstructionism in a moment, because they were then close to the largest movement of Judaism in the world. It was faster than most, of course, but it was slower than those who refused to stay silent wanted. And still more tardy, more slow, more hesitant was the conservative movement. If Reform Judaism stumbled while trying to say yes, the conservative movement spent decades trying to find a way to say maybe. The conservative movement was caught in a bind of its own making, trying to remain committed to halakha, to Jewish law, while also serving an increasingly egalitarian and socially progressive membership. By the 1980s, many conservative Jews, especially in urban and academic centers, were open to LGBTQ inclusion. Their congregants were marching in pride parades. Some rabbis were quietly performing same-sex commitment ceremonies off the books, not unlike what they're currently doing with interfaith marriages. And many of their synagogues had begun to welcome gay and lesbian Jews to the pews. But when it came to the formal movement, the policy, the answer remained no. The defining moment for this happened in 1992, at exactly the same time that the Reform movement was welcoming gays and lesbians and transgender people ultimately into their rabbinical school. Well, the conservative movement went the other way. Its Committee on Jewish Law and Standards, the CJLS, the most powerful Jewish halakhic or Jewish law, Jewish legal halakhic decision-making organization in conservative Judaism, which sets the standards, which cannot be in most cases violated, issued during that year a teshuvah. Teshuvah is a legal Jewish document, a responsum, stating case law as it should be followed. It was penned by a man named Joel Roth, a rabbi, and is still known as the Roth Teshuvah, I would say today somewhat infamously. That document upheld every traditional prohibition against same-sex relationships. It acknowledged compassion, but forbade behavior, and absolutely forbade that behavior for rabbis. And thus, it banned openly gay and lesbian students from admission to its seminary, the Jewish Theological Seminary of America on the Upper West Side of New York. There was at the time a small competing seminary. It never really took off in California, so some went there. But this really was a blow to gay acceptance in the conservative movement. It was a devastating decision. More than denying inclusion, way beyond that, for many LGBT Jews who grew up in or were otherwise attracted to conservative Judaism's modern take on tradition and Jewish law, the move felt like they were being shoved back into the closet or really out the door altogether. It told them, sure, you can join our congregations, that wasn't forbidden, but you are not fit to serve as our rabbis. The fallout was immediate. Many left the movement altogether, others stayed but never really felt at home. And for those who had already begun studying for the rabbinate, who had come out privately or wanted to, the decision was a major betrayal. And it would take another 14 years, did I say the late 20th century? For them, the early 21st century, 2006, before things began to change. In that year, after intense debate, the committee approved a new teshuvah that permitted both the ordination of openly gay and lesbian rabbis and same-sex commitment ceremonies. 2 years later, JTS admitted its first openly gay rabbinical students, and by 2012, the first of these these students would be ordained, and that was a milestone for conservative Judaism. But that was a long delay, and it left scars. Even today, some conservative congregations, there are a few that are on the more traditional side on this, remain uneasy with full inclusion. Those are mostly located outside of the United States. And while the movement's official stance is affirming, the halakha, the Jewish legal stance, the arguments, they remain complex, still rooted in the need to explain away or to reinterpret ancient texts in ways that maybe many feel are illegitimate. I being one of them, only for the reason that I don't have any allegiance to these texts. I have an appreciation for them, but I don't ever feel like kosherizing them, as a term we all know from Rabbi Wein. I don't need to make them say what they don't. As major liberal movements go, there's only one that we haven't covered. It's not us, by the way. It's Reconstructionism. Maybe a stretch to say they're major, but it's a bigger stretch to say we're major, but I will get to us. Reconstructionism, of course, is the smallest of the major movements, but they were a trailblazer, unfortunately so small that most people didn't notice, because even as the Reform movement was dithering over admissions to rabbinical school, the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in 1985, the second year that I was in rabbinical school and the Reform movement, was already becoming the first to accept openly gay and lesbian students for rabbinical ordination. And it declared without hedging that sexual orientation, and ultimately it added transgender and all gender issues, should not be a barrier to Jewish leadership. By '92, the movement had produced a fully developed liturgy for same-sex ceremonies, for weddings and so forth, years before any of the larger movements had made such resources widely available. Where other movements required years of the internal struggle that we saw in the Reform movement, far too long that went on, though they were ultimately the ones who led the way. Or these cultural and halakhic revisions that need to be made. Reconstructionism never needed to be persuaded. They never argued about it, not for a moment. It was built from the start with the idea that Jewish life evolves, even Jewish law, in conversation with the values of the time, and that evolving in the direction of dignity, of justice, of authenticity was never a betrayal of Judaism, but its fulfillment. And they are, in many ways, a halakhic movement. Even if Reconstructionism wasn't the loudest voice in the room, it was, I think, the clearest. And I think it's really what got the fire burning under the tuchuses of the Reform movement. I remember in rabbinical school, students saying, Reconstructionism has already done this. We need to get it going. And ultimately, we had a much larger cadre of older rabbis to deal with. It did get going. They modeled what full inclusion could and should look like. Of course, speaking of not being the loudest voice in the room, well, I think that's us. We're certainly not the loudest, but we are the only movement founded by a gay rabbi. A couple of years ago, I invited MSU's Professor Tim Retzloff to speak to us about, in part, about Rabbi Wein's role in gay rights in general. It was greater than many of us realized, and that's because it was quiet. Because even in our movement, one without a single drop of allegiance to Jewish law, halakha, we were too constrained by the wider culture. Our coming out, however, was painless and wonderfully smooth. And though the larger story is the story of the sizable movements that influenced tens of thousands and ultimately millions of American Jews, didn't really make a mark. What we stood for, dignity, truth, and full equality, well, that's never marginal. So we do also have what to be proud of very, very much. What about Orthodox Judaism? Well, if Reconstructionism and Humanistic Judaism began with dignity as a given, and Reform and conservative Judaism got there after struggle, Orthodox Judaism is and will remain, officially at least, unyielding. In the world of halakha, serious Orthodox halakha, there is no halakhic authority that has permitted same-sex marriage, much less the ordination of openly gay, lesbian, or transgender rabbis. It's unheard of, it'll always be unheard of. Same-sexual acts between men are considered God's word, a violation of Torah law. Female same-sex relationships, as I mentioned earlier, though not in the Torah per se, continue to be deemed serious Jewish legal deviations. Trans people, well, they are largely rejected en masse, treated as either mentally ill and at best ignored. But this is not the entire story. People are not halachic codes. And in some Orthodox communities, the people have been wrestling with something deeper than halachic dogma. The lived presence of LGBT Jews in their families, in their schools, and in their synagogues has made a difference. A real turning point in public discourse among Orthodox Jews some Orthodox Jews, came in 2001. That was the year that a documentary was released called Trembling Before God. And just to look at the title, you would know that it was Orthodox because it said G-D. I know a lot of people are doing that today. It's so silly. But back then, it was only the Orthodox. For the very first time, though, this film allowed Orthodox gay and lesbian Jews, I knew a couple in the film, they were people who lived near me, to tell their stories in what was a very public forum, a film, that emphasized compassion and not pity. The film went all through the country and was presented as part of dialogue forums, which attracted many, including Orthodox Jews, occasionally even an open-minded Orthodox rabbi who wanted to learn what the real story was and what the real pain was. Arthur went to 2 of these, and I went to one of them when they came to our neighborhood and town. It was the first time that Orthodox people had a forum to struggle with reality that these issues of human sexuality and variation were far from hypothetical challenges to Jewish law. They were no hypotheses or hypothetical idea. They were their sons, their daughters, their teachers, and neighbors. They were real people, and they had pain that could not be ignored. Prominently featured in the documentary was Rabbi Stephen Greenberg, ordained by the premier modern-leaning Orthodox seminary in the nation, Yeshiva University in Morningside Heights in Manhattan. Rabbi Greenberg later came out publicly, becoming the first openly gay Orthodox rabbi. I was quite a bit more traditional in those days, not Orthodox, but observant. And I actually read an article about his pain in the closet, but I didn't know it was him because he used a pseudonym. His pseudonym was Anonymous Person Living Alone, Ploni Levado. Rabbi Greenberg, after coming out, refused to leave Orthodoxy. He could have joined the conservative movement, but he refused. He chose instead to challenge it from within. Through his work on the heels of this film with a group called Eshel, he helped create support networks for LGBT Jews who remained closeted usually in Orthodox communities and often at great personal cost. There are many such stories, but none of them, of course, have brought any change to Orthodox institutions. Recently, Yeshiva University, which has an undergraduate branch, had disallowed and then allowed and then disallowed again very quickly a gay lesbian organization. It's very difficult to move an Orthodox Jewish institution in this direction. But all of this has changed some minds on a personal level. In 2010, over 150 Orthodox rabbis, including more than a few who were friends and colleagues of mine, people I know personally, who had worked in Hillel. These people tended to be outside congregations, or Jewish Federation agencies, or Jewish Federation itself, signed a statement of principles in which they affirmed, for the first time from Orthodox rabbis, the dignity of gay and lesbian Jews, even as it of necessity had to stop short of discussing halachic inclusion of any kind, as such was impossible to imagine. Elsewhere, some High school yeshivas and day schools in the Orthodox world have quietly adopted anti-bullying policies to protect children who are known to be of these proclivities, as they might say. A handful of Orthodox rabbis have even spoken publicly about creating some space, even a space for traditional yet gay Jews. I've seen it myself. My own grandchildren, as you know, attend an Orthodox day school. And yet Arthur and I come to Grandparents' Day as a couple. And we are warmly welcomed, not on a halachic level, not with bombarded with questions, just as Jack and Alexandra's grandparents. Years ago, the modern Orthodox day school that one of my daughters attended, well, they showed me the same kindness. Orthodox communities, of course, are still and will ever be, that's the definition of orthodoxy, constrained by halakha. But the people who live there, they frequently demonstrate that they are not constrained by cruelty. So while there's no way to surmount the walls of orthodoxy, there are opportunities to find cracks, and in those cracks, we have created conversations, sometimes even warmth. Leaving now aside for a moment these American religious movements here in the diaspora, I find that people are always curious about where Israel stands when it comes to LGBT rights. In truth, Israel is a place of paradox. You may have heard, due to all of the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel fervor out there, the term pinkwashing. Pinkwashing. This is a charge leveled against Israel by its detractors and haters. So what is pinkwashing? It's related to the word whitewashing, right? It's meant to say that Israel uses its relative progressivism on LGBT issues as a way to cover up, to pinkwash, its other alleged sins. I find the term incredibly insulting. Not just because it's a lie, and it is, but because it dismisses the reality, just like here and elsewhere, the progress made in Israel did not come as part of some engineered pro-Israel campaign. The progress that has happened is the result of LGBT people and allies demanding and receiving rights. It is this struggle that helped turn Israel into not only the most progressive country in the Middle East, but one of the most progressive countries in the world, legally, culturally, and socially. Now, there are still barriers that remain. One of these is the reality that Israel is also a place where religious control over personal status, what religion a person is, determines this. And it's basically things like marriage and divorce and burial and conversion. Well, these things, they still are covered by a person's individual religiosity. Why? Because Israel couldn't agree on changing it, and they inherited it from the Ottoman Turks, whose law remained in effect there even through the British mandate. This problem of religious control over personal status has the most impact on marriage. And so, of course, it creates limits for gay and lesbian Jews. But you should know, it also creates limits on straight Jews for a variety of reasons. I'll talk about more in a moment. But mostly there are positives, many positives. Tel Aviv is a great example, often ranked as one of the most LGBTQ-friendly cities in the world, and rightly so. The city hosts a Pride event that draws hundreds of thousands of people, many of them from abroad. Israel allows, actually requires, open military service for LGBT soldiers. Israel allows legalized adoption for same-sex couples. Israel permits surrogacy for gay men, a right fully secured in 2021 after years of legal battles. Israel boasts a supportive public, even in more conservative communities, now little c conservative, right? Politically conservative communities, tolerance has grown and fast, especially among younger, but not confined to younger Israelis. Now, back to marriage for a moment. When it comes to that biggest obstacle, I put it here because I wanted you to see the support for gay and lesbian people. queer people. A 2023 poll showed that over 70% of Israelis support full equal rights for LGBT people, including civil marriage. Remember we used to talk about that here? We said civil union and things like that, but that's not what they're talking about in Israel. Because this is not, as I've already indicated, an LGBTQ exclusive struggle. Everyone wants civil marriage in Israel. There isn't any. There's only religious marriage. And that goes back to the time of the Ottomans. And they simply cannot agree to change it. But they have gotten around it. How have they gotten around it? Well, it's a workaround, but it's more than a workaround. It's actually become the thing that people are using. Gay and straight alike will have their marriages accepted and recorded by the government and the Ministry of Interior if they take place abroad. That's always been the law. So you can come over here and a Reform rabbi can do your marriage. Arthur and I went to Canada and had it when it was legal there, before it was legal here. One of the reasons we went there is because we wanted international recognition in case we wanted to go to Israel. That's why we did it. That's why, and I'm glad we did it, because it turned out in 2015 the decision here was retroactive. So we got a little more credit for our time being married. So in Israel, though, you can marry and have this done, and many couples choose to do it. A lot of couples don't want to go to the Orthodox rabbinate for their marriages. Straight couples don't want to go to the Orthodox rabbinate for their marriages. So you can go to Cyprus, a short boat ride away. You can just go on a vacation and get married wherever you want, as long as they'll do your wedding. Straight couples, it's everybody. Gay couples, it's most of Europe, and certainly the United States, Canada, and many other places. And since the pandemic, it's been allowed in Israel to get married over Zoom as long as the originating place, believe it or not, Utah in America, will record your wedding in their state ledger. And so there are gay and straight couples in Israel who are getting married without the Orthodox rabbinate by ministers and rabbis or judges in Utah and a couple other states and other countries where you can do it over the internet. That's brand new and very cool. Why, you might be thinking, would a straight couple want to do this? Because they don't want to go to the Orthodox rabbinate. And now the Reform and Conservative rabbinate is growing in Israel, and so they'll go and they'll get their little civil marriage, and then they'll go and have a religious marriage with a Reform or Conservative rabbi, which otherwise would not have been recorded. So it's a wonderful thing. But aside from legal marriage, and I have dear friends who have done this, straight friends who have done this, Israel broadly recognizes common law relationships. And as it happens, they have Talmudic substantiation from this. Israeli civil law tries to look at Jewish law not as binding, but as inspiring when they can. And it happens that the Talmud presented an idea that if you are understood to be a couple by everyone who knows you, you're considered married. There's nothing about weddings in the Talmud. The wedding is a ceremony that we came up with, some of you studied this with me, that kind of combines some different elements that the Talmud mentions. So all you have to do is that. And in Israel, the law became quite like the Talmudic law, that you will get pretty much every legal right. Inheritance, tax benefits, hospital surrogacy, automatically. Know what Arthur and I had to do before 2009, before 2015 even, where you had to go and get 400 different legal agreements signed. It's a stack of paperwork sitting in a safe somewhere that still says what we can do or not do, that nobody needs to worry about anymore. None of this progress in Israel was engineered to pinkwash anything else going on in the state of Israel. All of it is because the vast majority of Israelis want their country to be a place where LGBT people live freely, openly, and with joy. And I'll add this. Palestinians from both Gaza and the West Bank have received asylum in Israel, seeking freedom. We have met some. We know that they're there. They are considered a zero security risk. And therefore, knowing that they will most certainly face death in the Palestinian territories, I am not exaggerating, either at the hands of their families or, in the case of Gaza specifically, Hamas, they come to Israel. It's not an apartheid state. Okay, We've spent most of tonight looking at the religious movements, at Israel, but there's a little more to the story. There are other elements of Jewish life in this country. The Jewish communal institutions, the federations, the JCCs, the Hillels. Well, they were also out there in the front of this battle. Greater Miami Jewish Federation, I'm proud to say, sponsors and has a float in the Pride Parade on South Beach every year. They don't do it in June. They do it in February. Makes a lot more sense. They are true allies. As late as 2000, when I was applying for the job at the JCC, which I held for 13 years, there was an Orthodox rabbi who campaigned against me. And I will tell you that Ed Rosen, I recorded what his name was, a wonderful man, was my executive director. He made it known to this man exactly what he could do with that idea and hired me the next day. Hillels on college campuses now host Pride Shabbats, colloquia, summer camps, and Jewish summer camps hold educational programs. They use inclusive language for rituals. Federations, as I've just mentioned, participate in all kinds of ways, including funding, supporting leadership pipelines, etc. Gay Jews have organized themselves all throughout the country, all throughout the world. We have groups like Keshet, we have Jewish Queer Youth. In Israel, much of that work was done by the Jerusalem Open House for Pride and Tolerance. And let me tell you, Jerusalem's not Tel Aviv. It's a little bit harder there, but there is a vibrant gay community there. Tel Aviv does have an enormous LGBT center, though, multi-floors. In the middle, the only building in the middle of the most beautiful park in central Tel Aviv. It's really a centerpiece, because that's what Tel Aviv is. And when a tragedy did strike there, at a nearby youth center that they hosted, and a fanatic came in and shot up some kids back in 2015, Shira Banki, a young girl who was killed, was mourned by the entire nation, and Israeli leaders from all stripes condemned it. A testament to their commitment to dignity for all. So this journey that we've retraced tonight, from invisibility to visibility, from fear to celebration, and from whispered hopes to public blessings, well, it was definitely a long and winding road. The song and the title was appropriate. There's still work, of course, to be done. We know that. But the direction is clear, and it's been shaped in our communities again and again, not just by policies and pronouncements, but by real people, by rabbis and Jewish teachers, Jewish activists, Jewish teenagers, parents, partners, all of them Jews who refused to leave, who stayed and found that they could make room and challenge others to do the same. Look, as a humanistic Jewish community, we know that dignity is not a gift that comes from above. It's a right that we must uphold for ourselves. So tonight's a good opportunity to affirm this. There will be no going back. There is only moving forward toward a Jewish future that is larger, richer, and more honest than what came before, where LGBTQ Jews are not guests, they're hosts, they're leaders, they're home. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And no, we don't do that. And we're going to invite Joseph to come back up. Remember, we put a little thing on that. That's a Devar Torah. You don't need to applaud it, Devar Torah. Thank you. What are we finishing with? Oh, Peace Be With You. That's a perfect song for this. Why not? Why not?
Peace be with you wherever you go. Peace be with you whatever you do. Peace be with you till we meet again. Peace be with you, my friend. Love be with you wherever you go. Love be with you whatever you do. Love be with you till we meet again. Love be with you, my friend. Join me with you wherever you go. Join me with you wherever you do. shalom. Shalom Aleichem, shalom, shalom, shalom Aleichem, shalom, shalom, shalom Aleichem, shalom.
Thank you for the streaming, to David, to Joseph, to Arthur for the slides, to all of you. Shabbat Shalom. Join us for our own egg.